for you. And without delay, I'm going to introduce you to our guest tonight. And our guest is none other than the fabulous, wonderful Shannon Wilson, Esquire, founder of Legacy Legal. Hey, Shannon.
Hi, Felicia. Thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you for coming on, honey. We're about to have some family talk tonight.
We are. We're going to sit at the table and get some info out there.
Yes, we are. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend a little time with us tonight. I'm really, really excited because I've been trying to get you on the show for the longest. I was like, come on, Shannon, you scheduled for April, for now, but that was in January, so I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
I know
it's good. I'm
you.
glad to be here.
So we'll lighten up the beginning and just talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about Shannon and what you're up to and the Legacy Legal and what you guys do over there.
Yeah. So I am an attorney, and I always tell people, unlike many attorneys who do A, B, C, D, and estate planning, I do estate planning. That is my bread and butter. That is my passion. And I do what I love, and I love what I do. And it's interesting because I have always had a servant spirit. And so when I came out of law school, that servant spirit took me to working for the federal government. And with the government, I worked in labor and employment law because while I was in law school and even before then, I had a lot of experiences that taught me about being on the employer side, being on the employee side, wanting to have a family, looking at what that looks like, and knowing that people spend more time at work than they do at home with their families. So
Yeah,
going into labor and employment was kind of a natural progression for me. And I left that and took a little bit of time off from law, started my own family, was a stay-at-home mom for a little while. I homeschooled one of mine for a little while and did a whole lot in the meantime. But then when I drew myself back to the law, the opportunity to engage in estate planning presented itself. And
okay.
I, like many people, immediately thought, oh my gosh, no, I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to be dealing with death all of the time. But I had a mind shift. And that mind shift was, Shannon, if people spend so much time at work, what are they doing that for if they're not doing so to make it better for their families and to create something for their families so that, rather than planning for Saturday night, they're planning for 3 generations from now. And the only way people can do that is through estate planning. So the servant in me said, that's what I'm going to do. And I have not looked back. I was with another firm for a while and I got a fantastic foundation. I'm not going to lie about that. I really did. But then I started thinking, you know what? I'm doing this for somebody else. I could be doing this for my own firm. I could be doing this for me and my family and my own legacy. So I started my own firm. And
Wow.
I get to pick and choose my clients. I work with people who I enjoy working with, which is all of my clients. I get to say this is the demographic I want to concentrate on, either if it's, week to week, month to month, day to day. Today I'm going to contact all of my female clients. Tomorrow I'm going to contact all of my married couple clients. Like I get to drive the ship. And so,
Absolutely.
estate planning is what I love.
That is absolutely awesome. And I can hear in your voice, Shannon, that you're very passionate about it.
I am.
And one of the things that you said in our previous conversations, and I think I saw it as a statement on your website, you said the only way that we can protect our families, businesses, and assets in the event of incapacity and the certainty of death is to plan.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we talked about is how you are on a mission to help our community get that because it is
Yes.
something that we don't talk about. We don't want to talk about death. Oh, I don't want to talk about end of life, but just when God get ready for me, I'm just gonna be gone. And then your children got to go fund me to raise money to bury you because you
Yeah.
have a plan. I have seen that so much in my family. And I'm so excited that you're here because maybe you can kind of get us out of that mode of, well, I don't need to leave anybody anything. What I got, I'm gonna die and take it with me, or y'all can fight over it after. That's not no. That's
It's a
not what
mind shift.
it's a mind shift. So we're gonna
Yeah,
shift some minds tonight.
absolutely. I'm for it.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah. It's
what do you
funny,
think?
Felicia. I just saw recently somebody that had a GoFundMe out there, and I thought, oh, here we go again. And and it was for somebody that I would not have thought that would have happened to.
Yeah, yeah. It amazes me every time. And I squirm, sometimes I'm like, don't call me. I ain't got no money to be giving you, very unsadly, because I thought Aunt Sally was doing all right.
Right.
No, she had this and that and the other, and her kids are fighting over this, and we can't get to her money. Or, girl, I'm
Yep.
over it. I feel, what is it, Shannon, in your work with
Uh-huh.
our community and
Mhm.
viewers? We're gonna get to some questions later because I know y'all itching to ask some questions. And if you have them, please put them in the comments. And those that I've received, we'll answer the ones that we've already received as well. But Shannon, what is it with it in working with people in our community?
Mhm.
What are the obstacles that keep us from shifting our mindset? Because it's a generational thing.
You know what, Felicia? The main obstacle that I have seen is exactly what you just said. It's a generational thing. And we, quite frankly, as a culture, are a little bit hyper when it comes to superstitions. And
Mm.
so, if 4 generations ago somebody did a will and died the next day, you know, 4 generations later, everybody's saying, I'm not going to do that. So and so did that and they died the next day. Or I'm not
Right.
going to get life insurance. I don't need life insurance. That means I'm going to die. Well, statistically speaking, 100% of us are going to die.
Exactly.
We just don't
100.
know the day nor the hour. And
Yeah.
so a lot of it is that superstition. And then some of it too is not thinking about the larger community. When I engage clients for estate planning, I always say, you know what? You are planning for you and your immediate family. But what happens in your immediate family trickles to their extended family, to that extended family, and it balloons. And really, what one person does can impact their entire community.
Hmm.
And so it when you make it more community based, like I said earlier, I'm a servant, and when I am serving my people, I'm not just thinking about that one individual. I'm thinking about the loved ones that they leave behind. I'm thinking about the business partners that have to pick up the pieces when they become incapacitated. I'm thinking about those minor children that will be impacted for the rest of their lives if something happens to mom or dad while they are minors. And so a lot of times people are very narrow focused, and that prevents them from thinking big picture. And estate planning is big picture thinking.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Be a
I
roadblock. It really can. It can be a horrible hindrance and a roadblock. And another thing, which probably I should have led with this, but most people think I don't have anything. I don't have anything to plan for. And inevitably, the people who say, I don't have anything, when I start asking questions, they have more than they think, right? You,
right.
you know, Having an estate doesn't mean you have to have $5 million and cars and houses and everything else. Anyone that has more than 3 pennies under a mattress or under the table lamp has an estate. Anyone that has even one person in their life that loves them has an estate. Anyone that has a vehicle that almost runs has an estate. The bottom line is anyone that has something that they would want to bless another with if something happens to them, or, which is usually the case, they just don't want the state to get it, then they have an estate and they need to plan it.
Yes. Yes. So to piggyback off what you just said, and then we'll get into some questions. Tell us in layman's terms, because I want to make sure everybody understands what estate planning is.
Okay.
Tell us in layman's terms what estate planning is. You just gave us some examples. Tell us in layman's terms, so there won't be any questions tonight.
Okay. So, in layman's terms, which is, regular everyday people words, estate planning is being strategic about planning for the possibility of becoming incapacitated, and how are all of your affairs going to be managed and handled, including, real property, money, children, businesses. How are all those things going to be handled if you should become incapacitated? And then planning for the certainty, 100% of death. So what happens upon your death? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Who gets the house? Who gets the car? What about this? What about that? All of the who, how, where, whens, and whats of death. That is what estate planning is. Planning for the possibility of incapacity and the certainty of death.
And how does Shannon help us with that?
How does Shannon help with that? That's a fantastic question. So, like I started earlier saying, I'm an estate planning attorney. And so what I do is I help people, individuals, couples, business associates, corporations. I help them put together the pieces of their life, the pieces of their business entity to put together a puzzle. All right. So just imagine having all of the pieces of your life in a box that says 500 pieces. And if something happens to you, you want whoever would be putting those pieces together to have a picture. Nobody can put together a puzzle without a picture, right? We get the box, it's got the picture on the outside. So I help them put together that picture in such a way that they could essentially hand that box to somebody and say, if something happens to me, this is what I want my picture to look like. When I pass away, this is what I want my legacy to look like. And here are all of the pieces and how you put them together so that my legacy looks the way I want it to look. And if the event of incapacity, so that things can go on in life and not fall apart because I am, for instance, in a coma at the hospital. Things can go on. Life can go on in a way that will be sustainable.
Okay. That is great. And that is a great lead into my first question from a viewer.
Okay.
So we'll start with this one. I got a few questions, but I'll start with this one first.
Okay.
So this one says, my mom is in her 80s, and I've always helped her with her bills while she is living. And in good mind and spirit, should I put my name on her bank accounts just in case something happens so that I can get money out, or should I have her put a power of attorney in place?
Oh, excellent question. And that is generally the lead in to what people ask, right? My parents are aging. What do I do? So in this scenario, mom is in her 80s. I cannot fully answer this. Let me preface this. I can't answer it without all of the details, but big picture, the answer to this question is, one, you can put your name on her accounts. She has to authorize that. If mom is of sound mind and able to put a power of attorney in place, naming a person and a backup. I always tell people, have one person and a backup just in case, right? Put that power of attorney in place. You cannot put the power of attorney in place for mom. And for those of you who don't know, a power of attorney is a legal document that allows you to say, while you are of sound mind, and anyone over the age of 18 should have this in place, to say, if I become incapacitated and I am unable to handle my financial issues or my legal issues, this is the person I named to do so for me. And this is the backup to that person just in case they are unavailable. So a power of attorney, again, it's a legal document that a person puts in place. No one can put it in place for you. So having your name on mom's accounts just in case, yes, that's a fantastic thing for just in case purposes. However, the power of attorney would do a lot more than just that checking account at Bank of America, if that's what mom wants.
Okay. So I think that kind of answers the next question that they had about if they had the right to verify or ask the insurance companies about beneficiaries. If they have that power of attorney, they would be able to liaise with the insurance company, right?
That is an interesting question. Sometimes, yes, it depends on how the power of attorney is set up. It depends on what authority that person gives you as power of attorney, because the authority given in that document can be very, very specific, or it can be really broad. So you can say, I give you access and authority to handle these bank accounts on this day. That's a very specific power of attorney. Or it can be really broad. I give you unfettered access to anything and everything that I would be able to do for myself if I were able to. The
Mm.
powers of attorney that I use are durable. That means it goes into effect immediately upon signing. So even if a person is not incapacitated, say they go on a trip around the world and they want their bills to still be paid while they're gone, their power of attorney could do that with the proper type of document. And
Okay.
so uh, insurance companies will not give information to somebody that does not have the authority. They won't tell you if you are they'll tell you if you are the named beneficiary, right? But they
Mm.
won't tell you if there are others. They won't tell you
Okay.
what the backup is. Um, and again, that power of attorney has to say whether or not you have the authority to communicate with insurance companies, or say Medicaid for government benefits, or the IRS for tax purposes. If you don't have in there that your power of attorney can contact the IRS on your behalf, your power of attorney can't call and check on that stimulus check or
Mm.
whatever else is coming. So the document, and this is precisely why, Felicia, this is why people should contact an attorney who is well versed in this area to do these documents for them. I love Google just like the next, but I would not rely on my Google search to draw up these documents for me.
Absolutely. That's why our viewers can contact Shannon. I'm gonna have this
Right.
question for a minute. That's Shannon's information, and it's gonna be in the comments as well. So yeah, if you have any additional questions about that, please don't hesitate to contact her.
Yeah.
We have a viewer that has a question. Shannon, is there a difference between a power of attorney and executor of an estate?
Absolutely. Yes, Kathy, there is a difference, and it's a major difference. So, a power of attorney is a document for while you are living. You name a person to handle your finances and legal issues while you are living. A power of attorney expires upon death. That
Oh.
is when the person that you have named in your last will and testament, that's the executor, and that's the person who picks up from there. So upon death, the executor steps in under the authority listed in the last will and testament to distribute assets and do what you have listed in your last will and testament for them to do. If a person does not have a will in place, then there is no executor, and somebody would have to go to the probate court and ask for permission. It's called a petition, ask for permission to become administrator on that estate.
Oh.
So, yeah, they're absolutely, a power of attorney expires upon death, and then your last will and testament kicks in if you have that, and or if you have a trust in place, which anyone who has minor children, anyone who has more than three pennies, anyone who has a business interest, and anyone who has real property should probably have a trust in place in addition to a will. I'll say that again, in addition to a will, because the will is the document that the state is going to be looking for upon death.
Mm.
If a person dies without a will in place, they're said to have died intestate. That's the legal word. And then the state, you open yourself up to the vulnerability of the state deciding all of the who's, how's, where, when's, and what's of death.
Mm.
So again, the documents, all of these documents, they talk to one another. So your power of attorney expires upon death, and it says, I have this will in place, and your will says, I drafted this trust at the same time, and some of the documents, like your healthcare documents. This is huge right now, huge, huge, huge. Healthcare documents allow you to say, if something happens to me, this is who can make my medical decisions for me. If you don't have
Wow.
that in place, you could find yourself sitting in the hospital and nobody is there to speak for you medically, and nobody knows what your choices would be if you are incapacitated and unable to speak for yourself.
And I've seen that happen so much, so many times,
Yeah.
so many times. So yeah, that is important for sure. That.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, we don't often think about that happening to us, But then we certainly don't take the next step, which is where I come in and where I help people think about this. Who would you name? Who are you going to name as your power of attorney to handle your finances and legal issues? And, that should be somebody, typically speaking, who is probably better at your finances than you would be, because
Right.
they're going to be taking the reins on that. But then when it comes to your health care, a lot of times in a lot of people's situations, they aren't going to name the same person to handle their finances as they would to handle their medical issues. I think
Mm.
that probably addresses part of this question. So you should have both a power of attorney for finances and legal issues, and then the separate one, which is called an advance directive or a living will, different, depends on what jurisdiction, what state you're in. But that part covers the healthcare. So if you have somebody in your life that you would trust with your finances, but if you have a do not resuscitate in those documents, they're not the one that's going to be able to say to Dr. So-and-so, she wants to do not resuscitate. I think it's time for us to pull the plug. If they're going to be that person saying, I can't do it. I can't do it.
You
Don't
don't.
name them. Don't name them. You should
Yeah.
name somebody that is going to be able and capable to express your wishes the way you would express them if you were able to voice them for yourself.
And I think that's the hard part with us because we don't want to do it. We don't want to be responsible for pulling that plug.
Nope.
We just don't want to do it.
That's right.
So you got to make sure that would be a hard one, but you got to make sure you got it in place.
Yes, you have, and the documents are not the same. So you can't have one power of attorney for one thing. It doesn't cover everything. So you have to have a separate one for finances and legal, and another one for the healthcare.
Okay. Okay.
Another
Let's
question.
see. Well, this is a good question. And again, call Shannon if you have more questions because
Yeah.
tonight is like a quick overview, but if you really need details, please call her because
Yeah.
she's right there for us. What's the relationship between financial planning, like in life insurance, and estate planning?
Excellent question. Another great question. So, in estate planning law, we run on, like I call, a highway. So imagine driving down any interstate and there's 6 lanes, right? One lane is life insurance and insurance planning, whether it's life insurance or something else. Another lane is financial planning that has all of your financial roadmap in line. Sometimes they cross. Another one would be tax planning lane. And then you have your estate planning lane. So I often work with insurance agents and CPAs and financial advisors to ensure that a person or a family or a couple's financial plan, estate plan, insurance plan are all cohesive. So they work together, but they're separate. So, for instance, if somebody has a life insurance policy in place, that is oftentimes used as a financial tool because it may have some cash value associated with it that they're building throughout life. But then it also has a death benefit associated with it. So upon the death of that person, some named beneficiary is going to get a payment. That named beneficiary that gets paid, that life insurance doesn't have to go through the probate process because it is not, say it's a policy on my life, it's not an asset that I own upon death. All right. So many times in estate planning, if somebody has a life insurance policy, I work with them to say, okay, why do you have this policy in place? And what do you want the legacy to be from this? Oh, well, I have this house that's worth $500,000. I have this life insurance policy that's $1 million, and I have 5 children. Okay, this is what I want that to look like. Upon my death, I want the life insurance to pay for my funeral. Then I want it to pay for that house so that there's no mortgage associated with it anymore. And then I want the rest of it to be split between my children. Well, that's when your estate planner comes in and says, okay, your will needs to say this. You need to feed it to a trust that says A, B, C, D, E. And then we change the beneficiary with the life insurance company to make sure that your wishes are met. Because how they intersect is if you just have a person named on the life insurance policy and they get paid, you can't dictate what they do with that money.
Mm.
And so I've seen this here recently in a case I have right now where they named person X in the life insurance policy as the beneficiary. When that person died, person X got the money and they went and did what they wanted to with it and left the rest of the family scrambling. Well,
Wow.
Auntie left me that money. Well, Auntie had something in mind for that money, but she didn't put it in the vehicle that could be communicated to you. And the life insurance company is only going to pay out who that beneficiary is, and they don't dictate. So,
Right.
and contrast that with having children. If you have a life insurance policy and you have your child listed as the beneficiary and your child is 10 years old when you pass away, nobody wants a 10-year-old getting money from a life insurance proceeds, right? But the
Right.
insurance company is going to pay to whoever their guardian is. Well, what if that's not who you wanted to be handling their money?
Hmm.
So that's again where they intersect. That's when your estate planning attorney comes in and says, this is how you should structure this so that that does not happen. And so there's a difference, but they all work collaboratively. Yeah, my team and I are very collaborative. If I have somebody who has a estate planning question that is on the tax end, because in some jurisdictions, some states, there is a tax for death. It's like a death tax. It's called an estate tax, right?
Mm.
Some states have an inheritance tax. Some states, like here in Georgia, we have neither.
Oh.
But contrast that with somewhere like New York, where the estate tax is 20 something percent. And so, you have to know what jurisdiction you're in. You have to know what the taxes are. There's also federal taxes that have to be taken into consideration. So for people who have income above that certain threshold and it's going up annually, it is to be seen how that's going to change with our current administration in place. But there's also tax planning considerations that go into estate planning. So they all work in conjunction. Financial planning, insurance planning, um, estate planning, they all work together. And that's not just life insurance. That also includes health insurance or long-term care insurance. If you don't want to be put in a nursing home and cared for, make sure you have enough planned and strategically so in your estate so that that doesn't happen. If you want to age in place, everyone's talking about, I want to age in place. Well, ensure that if something happens to you, you have the money, the finances to set it up so that you can age in place and have somebody come into your home and care for you. Again, that's where your estate plan comes in place. That's where your insurance planning comes into place, and they work together.
So if when we come to you, Shannon,
Mm-hmm.
you will tell us everything we need to say. We don't have the long term care in place. You'll advise us to do that of the
Yes.
things we need to put in place.
Yeah. And there are some things that everyone does not need. I do not do cookie cutter estate planning, and neither do with any of the colleagues that I work with. So I'm licensed in the state of Georgia. And since estate planning is an area of law, you should absolutely contact somebody that's in your jurisdiction. If you don't know anyone, give me a call. I have colleagues all over the United States that practice estate planning. Um, and so, yes, I help people sit down. I get an idea of what their goals are. What does your family structure look like? Why do you think you need to engage in estate planning? And sometimes people think, well, I wouldn't be here talking to you if that wasn't the case, but they don't have a picture of exactly why.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, so and so told me to come talk to you. Fantastic. Do you know why? Because I don't want anyone engaging my services that doesn't understand the big picture of what they need. And so that's why I have groups of people who always advise their, just like this question here says, financial planners. The first thing that they should ask is, when they're planning someone's finances, do you have an estate plan in place? Otherwise, what they're doing on the financial end of it isn't going to help the people that they leave behind, or the minor children that they leave behind, or business partners. Even
Mhm.
that, how you set up a business in the first place can impact your estate plan. And so I help people pick apart all of those things. What, again, I help them put together that puzzle, because so many times people know that they have all of those pieces of the puzzle and they have their individual puzzle pieces, but they don't know what that picture should or can look like.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Melinda. Here's Shannon's information. Please do contact her because you want to have everything in place the way it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shannon, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions because we could
Okay.
talk about this all night long.
We can. You
So,
look, Felicia, I can talk about it forever. So
so okay. So here's a scenario a viewer sent.
okay.
I'm a single mother with an adult child. I have a home that is not paid for. How can I ensure that my son gets the house, even if there's still a mortgage on it, and even if I state in my will that I want him to get the house? How would the mortgage part work? Either how if the house is paid for, is not paid for. Can you tell us
Yeah,
how that would work?
that's a great question, and people ask that all of the time. So this is another question where it depends on the jurisdiction where you are, the state that you are in. Many states have what's called a transfer on death deed that you can attach to your will that says, upon my death, I want this house to go to so and so. And then you have the deed drawn up that says so and so gets it upon your death. All right. All states do not have that, though. Georgia is one of those. We don't have that type of deed in place. So, in order for property to be properly transferred upon death, you have to have a plan in place. And that plan looks like, okay, upon my death, this is what I want it to do. I want it to go to my son. Fantastic. How do I get it to my son? I have to either transfer it to him prior to my death while I am of sound mind so that he gets it and he already has it, right? Or you have a tool, a mechanism in place to transfer it upon death, like a trust. So you put the trust's name on the deed and then it stays in the family forever and ever. One thing people have to be careful about, and I just did a workshop about this yesterday, is creating heirs property. And heirs property is a type of property where the person whose name is on the deed is deceased. And say 3-4 generations from now, a company comes and they want to buy that property, but they have to go through 3 generations, 58 people to figure out who owns it. And all 58 of those people could potentially own it if it wasn't properly probated or transferred upon death. So you have to have the deed in place. The question about the mortgage is different. And people often confuse the deed that says who owns it with the mortgage that says who's paying for it. Because technically, the bank owns it until that mortgage is paid off. So, what happens when a person passes away with a property, a home, or whatever that is, that still has a mortgage on it, and they want somebody else to get it? You either set them up, and again, this is in your planning, you either set them up so that they get that property and can pay off the mortgage, like having that life insurance policy in place that's going to pay the mortgage, or like having enough in a trust that's going to pay off the mortgage, or having enough in an account or whatever. Or you have it so that they assume the mortgage and then they have to let the mortgage company know. Bottom line, if somebody receives inheritance of a property that is subject to a mortgage and that mortgage is not paid, it's going to be foreclosed on just like any other property would be outside of COVID. We're still at a bit of a moratorium on foreclosures. But if it's not paid, it's going to get foreclosed on just like anyone else's property would if they were still living. So you have to set the plan up. You have to strategically plan your estate so that if someone is going to inherit it, first, the deed indicates who and how, and the deed is proper. And second, set it up so that they can either afford to assume that mortgage or you have set up some mechanism to pay that mortgage for them.
Wow, that's good stuff, Sharon. Shannon, you're dropping knowledge tonight, girl.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. It's a lot of information. And I'm so glad you said that because so often we just don't know what we don't know.
Right.
In addition to being an attorney, I'm also an educator. And, it was like estate planning is the perfect mesh of me doing law and being an educator, because I can educate people on the importance of estate planning, and two, how it impacts generations and how even impact you tomorrow. I'm a little bit of a clumsy person. So if I were to walk out of my house and trip and nobody is out there to catch me, then, and I don't have my estate plan, what's going to happen?
Yeah, yeah.
You got to have everything in place.
And we typically just don't. But
Um,
I tell you what, I bet you're gonna get a lot of calls because I'm gonna call you too. I think I need to try to change some stuff around.
I'm telling you, and really, I'm with all seriousness, I do. I know I have colleagues all over the United States, and um, many of whom look like me, right? Because so many times, especially in our community, talking about what you have or don't have is really personal.
Mhm,
And we are a bit of, like I said this earlier, we're kind of superstitious, and we don't want anyone and everything knowing our business while we're living, much less do we want them knowing our business once we pass away. And
mhm.
so talking to somebody that you trust, because and your estate planning attorney is considered a trusted advisor, talking to somebody that you trust is many times easier when that person looks like you, or that person can appreciate the culture that you come from, or can appreciate your family dynamics and your family background because they share the same sort of stories. So I collaborate with people in all age demographics and race demographics, and I often match clients with those who I think would work best with them. And that goes across the board for my other synergy partners too, the financial advisors I speak with, and everyone else.
Absolutely, I love it. Okay, I got one more question, but
Okay.
this one is we haven't dealt with relationships, so this is kind of on the relationship side.
Okay. All right.
And it's really three questions. I'm gonna try to put them all into one.
Okay.
Okay, so A and B are married. They both
Okay.
have children from previous marriages. A and B purchase a home together, but A dies. What happens to the house and what can be done to make sure the living spouse can remain in the home?
Okay. Was that all three questions?
No.
Okay. Go ahead. Hit me with the next part.
Okay, so the same couple, A and B,
Uh-huh.
um, but one of them, they have both have children from previous marriages.
Uh-huh.
One, A, has to go to a nursing home and needs to sell the house they purchased together 50 years ago. So the house is paid for, but he needs to go to a senior living facility. Can the house be sold by B, or what needs to be done?
Okay.
And
So
then, yeah,
let me pause right there then.
okay.
Okay, Alicia, that is loaded.
I know, I
That
know.
is loaded. So, first, I will preface this by saying blended family considerations absolutely have to engage in estate planning. In
Mm,
today's society, blended families are more prevalent than traditional families. And so, with that comes a whole other element of planning. And I often, here we go again, I sit with people and say, in your blended situation, what do you want this to look like? That yours, mine, and ours factor is really strong, because gaga goo goo, oh, I love you and I love your babies too, and I love you and I love your grown children too, until something happens and then grown children step in and say, that's my mama's house.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so estate planning has to take that into consideration, and the only way to do it is strategically plan. Again, it depends on what jurisdiction you're in. Sometimes a spouse, whether it is a spouse from a current marriage or not, a spouse, if you haven't changed things, could be entitled. In some states, your spouse is automatically entitled to a portion of your estate. Georgia is the only state, crazy Georgia, where you can disinherit your spouse. But again, in order to do that, you have to plan. All right. So
Oh my God, you can disinherit your
you
spouse?
can disinherit your spouse in Georgia. Every other state, the spouse is entitled to what's called an elective share, which is an automatic portion of it that they can petition the court for.
Wow.
So A and B were married. A and B live in house. Um, one dies, they want the house to go to children. Okay. They have to have a plan in place that says the children get the house. They have to have a plan in place that says spouse can stay in the house until they die, and then it goes to spouse's children, or then it's sold and the proceeds split between, yours and mine, or whatever it is. However you want it to go, you have to have it in writing in a qualified estate plan that is legal, right?
Mm.
In many states, or in all states actually, I don't care if grandma said, baby, when I go, I want you to get the house. If it's not in writing, nobody cares. It's not going to matter if it's not in writing. And if it's not in a legally qualified writing, meaning it meets the laws of the state in which that was done or where they pass away, again, it's not going to matter. So
Wow.
having it in place is the best way to do that. The next part
Wow.
of it is having it in place properly. So you meet with an attorney, you have a trust in place, or you have that will that dictates the property if you're in one of those states that allows that. Or you both parties should have all of these in place. A and B both should have a plan. Estate planning, especially when you are married, is not a you do yours and I don't really care what happens on the other end. If both parties need to engage in it, because nowadays there's no such thing as a joint will.
Mm.
There's not. Some people still do it, but it's not advised, because then what happens if, what's the likelihood of two people dying together at the same time?
Right.
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 And even people that are married for 50 years, sometimes they have different ideas and goals about what happens with their assets. So having a plan in place for both people, and portions of that plan are joint. Like a trust could be a joint trust that says, while we're married, this is what we have, this is what's going to happen with it. Once person A dies, this is what happens. Once person B dies, this is what happens. So having
Mm.
all of those things in place. The second part of the question was about somebody going into assisted living, for instance, and whether or not
Mm.
that house can be sold. So that opens up a whole other can of worms, because now we're potentially talking about Medicaid planning. And
Mm.
Medicaid planning involves getting funds from the government to pay for that assisted living. And there are ways to plan your estate so that you still have that nest egg and that house and everything, yet you still qualify for those government benefits like Medicaid.
Really?
The only way to do that, again, is to plan and to know how to do so. You can put those funds in a certain type of trust that protects those assets, and then you still qualify for Medicaid, yet you still have your assets. There's also a certain way to do that if there's another spouse that still lives in the house. They can't, kick them out to pay for your care and things like that. So yes, that does happen all of the time, but there are ways around it, and there are ways to strategically set your financial house up so that it doesn't happen.
Wow. And call Shannon because that sounds like it's a little complicated right there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this
Oh,
is
I see
my
another
last
question here.
question.
My children have a conservator. Can I request to change the law firm that oversees their funds? So, conservator, for those of you who don't know, is a person who is in charge of the finances of another individual who is unable to care for their own finances. If a person doesn't have a financial power of attorney in place and they become incapacitated, someone has to petition the court to become their conservator. Or if there's minor children and maybe they have some special needs, or they have um, been the subject of a lawsuit and they received some lump sum settlement, some jurisdictions require there to be a conservator in place for those funds. Can you request a change in the law firm that handles those funds? If you are the conservator outside of them, yes, you can, because you're the one handling them. If otherwise, you have to go back to the court and ask for permission. Anytime there is a change in place with any plan, especially if it's court ordered, like a conservator being in place, you have to go back to the court that issued that to get permission. So if you want to sell property to care for them, you have to get permission. If you want to do anything with the use of those funds outside of it, you have to get permission. It also requires like annual reporting on funds and annual reporting on health of individuals if it's for their health care. So anything that requires reporting to the court, you just have to ask for permission to make any changes to it, whether that is the person administering it or whether that is, selling some asset that they own. I hope that
Wow.
answered the question. I think so, but I'm not quite sure. If not, give me a call.
If not, give you a call. Wow, Shannon, this has been great and so much information. I'm gonna have to go rewatch this episode to just
Yeah.
let it all sink in. But
Yeah, it's
it's
a
great
lot of
information.
information. It is a lot of information. Yeah,
I would
and one
love.
thing I always do, Felicia, and I don't even know if you and I talked about this, but I'm going to throw this out there. So,
Okay.
anytime part of what I do for the consultations that I have with people is a lot of the educational aspect of it. And so, anyone that is watching tonight, watching through this Gold Diggers webinar, give me a call. Let me know that you were on, and I will set you up with my complimentary consultation. I, you know, People shouldn't. A lot of times, attorneys charge by the hour for a consultation, and I do that as well. Unless you were in one of my educational workshops, which this is, then that consultation is complimentary. Just let me know that you're on here with Felicia.
Okay. Yes, you better say Felicia. She ain't gonna let you do it.
That's right.
Well,
That's
thank
right.
you, Shannon. That is absolutely awesome. I'm gonna take you up on that myself.
I know you will.
Um, Jackie, I think you're. No, I think Shannon said she was
Licensed in
licensed.
Virginia or North Carolina. I am not, but I have dear colleagues who are licensed in both Virginia. I have a couple in Virginia, a couple in North Carolina, and one that's licensed in both.
Okay, Jackie, you good with that? I'm gonna put mention Gold Digger Diaries
That's
for.
right. For complimentary initial consultation. Yeah, and the thing with being in different jurisdictions, so say a person owns property in one place, but they live somewhere else. So that estate plan would be a multi-jurisdictional plan. And
Mhm.
and that's why I have to have trusted partners and advisors in other jurisdictions. Because, for instance, I have one right now where the people who are putting their plan in place live here in Georgia. They have property in Maryland. They have property in New York. So that's going to require their plan to take care of everything they have here in Georgia, as well as items, especially real property that they have in Maryland and that they have in New York. So I've already partnered with the people I know in both of those jurisdictions that that have property in other places. So absolutely, a lot of times it's not even about where you are; it's where your assets are, or for instance, if it's for family. Yeah, and I often do family planning. I have done planning for two and three generations is the most that I've done it for. It was probably one of the most fun signings I had. I had grandma, mom and dad, and then their 20-something-year-old son. All of them did their estate planning together. Their plans coincided and they mixed and they were perfect for the entire family. So
Wow.
that often happens.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Shan, I really want to ask you one more question. Can I ask you one more?
Sure, sure, sure.
Because I really want to know the answer to this one.
Okay.
It's another relationship. You know, I like these relationship questions.
I know you do. That's fine.
So, A and B again, but they're younger.
Hmm.
A and B live together, and it's A's house. They get married, but he wants a prenup. Should I put my house in the put up? Should I put my house in the prenup, or I want my house to go to my children or grandchildren? What can I do to protect my home from him getting it?
Okay. Excellent question. So this is the intersection of estate planning and family law
Mm,
because a prenuptial agreement is for family law. And So, what a prenup is an agreement that people enter into before they get married that says, in the event that we separate, in the event that we divorce, this is what that's going to look like. And it essentially divides their assets before they even get married. All right. So, that prenup would be in place. So, um, let's just say it's me. All right. It's my house. We get married. I want to keep that house so that I can pass that house on to my children. So before we get married, I'm going to have a prenuptial agreement that says, in the event we split up, this house is mine. It stays mine. It's not going to be any of that yours, mine, and ours. It stays mine. And then I have my estate plan in place that says, in the event of my death, this is what happens with that house, whether it goes into a trust or some other mechanism that will allow it to be properly transferred at my death. So, excellent question. It is the intersection of estate planning and family planning, family law. It happens all of the time. A friend of mine always tells me, and my office partner actually does family law, and people say to me, estate planning is like family law on steroids, because it is. Because of situations just like this. I
Yeah.
also tell people, when you're planning your estate, if you have a trust in place and you're taking care of your children's children and your children's children's children, right? They need to know, especially if it's a substantial estate, they need to know you need to have a prenup in place, because I'm not creating this plan for you to, marry some knucklehead and they walk off with everything that I was planning for you.
Wow.
So in many jurisdictions, when you don't have that plan in place, if somebody is in that bloodline, they are automatically entitled to some things. That estranged son or daughter, or that play cousin that we all have, that's not really with us, but you want to keep, you want to take care of them. If you don't have that plan in place and those documents in place, they are not going to get taken care of. They
Wow.
will not be accounted for. And child, say you have 3 children, A, B, and C. A, B, and C are all entitled to the same thing in your estate if you pass away without a plan in place that specifically accounts for one over the other, or however that looks. So, people
Wow.
often say, I'm not going to do anything because everything's going to be divided equally. Well, if you don't have a plan in place, it may not happen that way. So, um,
Hmm.
again, having it in place sure does beat the alternative. You don't want your family and your loved ones or your business partners or your minor children, God forbid, to be stuck in probate court, or to be sitting somewhere saying, "Well, who gets the baby?" Have a plan in place, and in some states, it is not automatically your spouse.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, honey, we're gonna look. We're gonna go to one fun question, Shannon, because
Love it,
you've been serious all night.
love it, love it. Give me the fun question.
So, what does Shannon like to do for fun?
What does Shannon like to do for fun? Something I did fun this weekend was I went and walked around in the little town square and ate ice cream.
Okay.
Take the mask off, had some ice cream. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Another something I like to do for fun that I haven't done recently because of COVID and I'm too chicken is I like to just go to the spa and get a massage or sit in the hot tub or whatever is there. Again, I haven't done it in a year because of COVID, but it's coming again. I will get back to it. I
Yeah.
also have 2 very, very active sons, and it's fun to me to go and watch them and support them in their activities.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, this Shannon versus the 18-year-old Shannon, what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh, Felicia.
What would you tell young Shannon?
I would tell 18-year-old Shannon to follow your passion. And I would tell 18-year-old Shannon, do what you love to do, because life is too short, life is too unpredictable. And if you can't do what you enjoy, you're not going to enjoy it. I have had jobs that felt like a job and I hated it. I hated it. I don't care how much you're making. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy it. well, me anyway, I'm not really money driven, so that doesn't make life enjoyable for me. So I think I said this in the beginning. I do what I love, and I love what I do, and I would absolutely tell 18-year-old Shannon to do that. That didn't happen initially. I had to get to 18 plus years before I got back to that, right? But
Yeah.
you're right. But now, I do what I love, and I love what I do. And I think that had 18-year-old me known that, some of the choices I made and some of the decisions I made would have been different. I know eventually I would have gotten back to it just like I did, but some of the heartache that came with it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great that we can look back and take advice from our 18-year-old self, no matter how old we are, because we
Right.
learn something every time. I do when I think about my 18-year-old self.
Mm-hmm.
It taught me. It is teaching me a lot of lessons.
That's right. Woo, thank God. Right.
But we needed those lessons to be where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
I believe everything that we experienced to this point in our lives, we needed. We
Right.
needed to go through those things.
Right. Right. And
So
it's funny you ask that because even 18-year-olds need an estate plan. They don't think they do.
they
Believe
do.
Look, I have one. They don't think they do, but when you're 18, you are considered an adult. So
Yes.
mom and dad and nobody can make your financial decisions for you. If you screw up on something,
Oh,
unless you have that document in place, nobody can help you with it. If
oh,
something happens to you and you are in the hospital, nobody can help you. No one can make your decisions for you unless you have that document in place.
oh,
So,
wow.
estate planning is not just for people who are what they say knocking on death's door,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For anyone 18 years old and up, we all need it. The
Hmm.
quality of what you have and the documents that you have vary with different ages and stages in life, but everyone needs it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just before we close, I know I've made light of some things tonight, but I wanted to keep you guys engaged. But I cannot reiterate enough to you how important it is for us to come to get together and plan our estates,
Mhm.
because a lot of times the government has too much of a hand in our finances and stuff after we're gone. But
Mhm.
if you want to leave a legacy and you want to leave things in place for generations to come, this is how you start to to um, to build generational wealth.
That's
This
right.
is how Caucasians have done it for years. I've seen them do it. It's we've got to get on board to this. It's not going to that little stimulus check you're getting, all that. Take a little bit of that and call Sharon and say, Sharon, I need you to draw this up for me, or whatever it is you need. But I think it's worth the investment, and I think we need to, and it's not going to really cost you that much, is it, Shannon?
Nope, it's an investment.
It's an investment. So I just really think it's important. Share this information that we've gotten tonight. Share it with you. It's on the YouTube channel. Send them to the YouTube channel. They ain't got to like the channel. They ain't got to subscribe to it. I think it's just very important that this information that we start having these conversations. And this won't be the
Absolutely.
last one. It won't be the last
Absolutely.
one because it's just I'm tired of burying people. Can you tell? I'm tired of raising
Mhm.
money.
Mhm. Yeah, one fish fry is one fish fry too many. One
Yes.
GoFundMe is one too many. And so, absolutely, the investment, while you're able to make the investment, is much easier to swallow. So that in the event, again, in the event of incapacity and the certainty of death, your family can just grieve.
Yeah.
Grieving is hard enough without having to worry about the business aspect of death. So
Yes.
take care of the business aspect beforehand so that those that you leave behind can grieve properly and grieve comfortably.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Shannon, so much. And
Thank
thank you
you,
guys for
Felicia.
joining us, our gold friends out there. Thank you for joining us tonight. And please, like I said, go watch the replay, share it with your family, your friends, and contact Shannon if you have any questions, or go ahead and schedule a consultation with her.
Right.
And mention Gold Digger Diaries, and it will be
That's
a
right.
complimentary consultation. So I
That's right.
appreciate you guys. And until next week, be blessed.
Thank